As AI spreads across healthcare, pharma, biotech, and medtech, should these industries start asking whether they are building value or quietly handling it away? That is one of the core concerns raised in Reshuffle, a book by economist Sanjit Chowdhury.
What the coordination logic of the book implies for healthcare. Healthcare providers risk becoming wrappers around external AI engines. The book argues that when AI tools become performance defining engines owned by third parties, solution providers lose differentiation and pricing power. Applied to healthcare, hospitals, clinics, and digital health startups that rely deeply on third-party AI for diagnostics, triage, imaging reads, or clinical decision support risk becoming delivery shells. Patients may believe they are choosing a hospital, but in reality, they are choosing the same underlying AI engine used by many competitors. Over time, differentiation based on clinical excellence erodes if outcomes are driven by the same external models. The net effect is that healthcare providers retain liability and trust, while AI vendors capture performance and value. AI vendors may absorb clinical reasoning and move up the stack. The book explains that tools absorb tacit and expert knowledge, learn across customers, and then rebundle that knowledge as infrastructure. In healthcare, AI vendors trained on millions of clinical notes, scans, outcomes, and workflows can develop system-level clinical intelligence that no single hospital can match. These vendors may begin offering end-to-end diagnostic pathways, treatment optimization engines, and care coordination platforms. At that point, they are no longer assistive tools. They become architects of care pathways. The net effect is that hospitals risk being reduced to execution environments providing beds, staff, and compliance, while intelligence migrates upstream. Pricing power shifts away from providers toward AI platforms. The book emphasizes that productivity gains accrue to tool providers or end customers, not to solution providers. In healthcare, AI lowers the cost of diagnosis, documentation, and decision support. Payers and governments will demand lower reimbursement, arguing that efficiency gains should be passed on. At the same time, AI vendors can raise licensing fees, introduce performance-based pricing, or charge per clinical decision or per outcome signal. The net effect is that providers become faster and cheaper, but not more profitable. Outcome-based healthcare accelerates, but risk shifts. The book frames outcomes as a service as the end game, where true solutions absorb risk. In healthcare, pharmaceutical and medtech companies move toward outcome-linked pricing based on patient response or recovery speed. AI becomes essential for measuring outcomes, attributing causality, and dynamically adjusting care bundles. Whoever controls the AI that measures and adjudicates outcomes controls the logic of reimbursement. The net effect is that AI vendors could become de facto arbiters of medical value unless providers retain control over representation and governance layers. Regulation slows providers, but not AI learning loops. The book notes that tool providers operate at a much higher clock speed than regulated solution providers. Hospitals, insurers, and pharmaceutical companies operate on slow cycles involving trials, approvals, and guidelines. AI vendors iterate weekly using cross-institutional data. Even compliant providers become structurally slower than the tools they depend on. The net effect is that healthcare institutions adapt to the tempo of AI, not the other way around. From these dynamics, several industry trajectories are likely. One trajectory is AI-centered healthcare stacks. A small number of dominant AI platforms become the engine layer for diagnosis, triage, and care optimization. Providers plug in and differentiation collapses. Regulation increasingly focuses on the engines rather than on individual hospitals. Another trajectory is provider-owned engines, which is difficult but defensive. Large health systems build or co-own core AI models. AI becomes strategic infrastructure rather than a software subscription. Smaller providers struggle to compete. A third trajectory is split control. AI vendors control performance while providers retain liability, trust, and patient relationships. This creates constant tension, margin pressure, and repeated renegotiation. The book strongly implies this split control scenario in the short term, with AI centered stacks emerging over time unless providers act strategically. In healthcare, AI will not just assist care, it will quietly decide who owns performance, margins, and future learning. If hospitals and pharmaceutical companies treat AI as a convenient tool rather than a strategic engine, they risk outsourcing their competitive advantage while keeping all the risk. Who wins in AI driven healthcare structurally rather than narratively following the book's logic about value capture? The short answer is this: AI platforms win first, insurers win next, pharmaceutical companies win selectively, hospitals lose unless they radically reposition. Now let's unpack why, actor by actor, AI platforms are the primary winners unless regulation blocks them. The book argues that the winning actor is the one that controls the performance defining engine, learns across the entire ecosystem, operates at the highest clock speed, and can rebundle expertise into infrastructure. AI platforms meet all four conditions. In healthcare terms, AI platforms learn from many hospitals rather than from a single institution. They absorb clinical reasoning, triage logic, and diagnostic heuristics. They improve continuously while providers move slowly. They begin as assistive tools and then evolve into diagnostic engines, workflow orchestrators, and outcome measurement layers. Once AI defines what good care looks like, every other actor orbits around it. These platforms do not initially hold liability, but they do hold performance. Over time, they can move up the stack into full solutions. Structurally, they are the biggest winners. Insurers are quieter but powerful winners. The book emphasizes that when execution costs collapse, pricing power shifts, and whoever controls measurement and outcomes gains leverage. Insurers already decide reimbursement, price risk, and define what counts as value. AI strengthens these capabilities. With AI, insurers can audit care quality algorithmically, enforce outcome based reimbursement, approve or deny care faster and more precisely, and push cost savings downstream. They benefit from AI without needing to build it themselves. The key insight is that insurers do not need to own the engine, they only need to use it to discipline everyone else. Structurally, they are strong winners, especially in outcome based care models. Pharmaceutical companies face a split outcome. They sit at a fork in the road. In one path, pharma integrates AI into its core engine and wins. If pharmaceutical companies own or co-own AI models in research and development, use AI to design trials, stratify patients, predict response, and move toward outcomes. Linked pricing, they become solution providers rather than pill vendors. They retain pricing power and align drug value with real-world performance. This is what the book hints at with personalized reimbursement models. In the other path, pharma uses AI only as a tool and loses leverage. If companies license generic AI tools, use the same models as competitors, and continue pricing drugs per unit, AI commoditizes discovery. Payers apply price pressure and differentiation erodes. The outcome for pharma depends entirely on whether they own engines or rent intelligence. Hospitals and providers are the default structural losers unless they transform. This is the hardest implication of the book. Hospitals move slowly due to regulation, staffing constraints, and legacy systems. They learn only from their own patients. They bear liability and trust. They rarely own core AI engines. The book's warning applies directly here. The solution provider becomes a delivery shell wrapped around someone else's performance layer. Hospitals risk being reduced to execution environments, compliance shells, and providers of labor and infrastructure. They lose differentiation, pricing power, and control over care logic. Hospitals avoid this fate only if they own or federate AI engines, control care pathways end to end, absorb risk, sell guaranteed outcomes, and act as system builders rather than service sites. This is possible but rare and extremely hard. By default, hospitals lose unless they undergo radical redesign. The deepest insight from the book applied to healthcare is this: healthcare will not be reorganized around compassion, expertise, or institutions. It will be reorganized around whoever controls performance measurement and learning. That is almost never the hospital. Will AI platforms win in all industry sectors? The short answer is no. AI platforms do not automatically win in every industry. The longer answer is that they win only under specific structural conditions and lose under others. What the book is really offering is a diagnostic test, not a prophecy. The rule distilled from the book is this: AI platforms win only when the AI layer becomes the performance-defining engine and can learn faster than the rest of the system. If either of those conditions fails, they do not win. To make this precise, the book implies 5 conditions that must largely be true for AI platforms to dominate. First, performance must be algorithmically measurable, such as diagnosis, accuracy, routing efficiency, or prediction quality. Second, learning must compound across many customers, meaning cross-institution data matters more than single organization data. Third, the AI layer must operate at a higher clock speed, with weekly model updates compared to yearly organizational change. Fourth, switching costs must become performance-based, so leaving the AI leads to worse outcomes rather than mere inconvenience. Fifth, liability must remain with the solution provider, meaning the AI influences decisions but does not own outcomes. When these conditions align, AI platforms win. When they do not, AI platforms stall or lose. There are several industries where AI platforms are likely to win. Healthcare is one of them. Performance is measurable, learning can occur across institutions, providers move slowly, and liability is often externalized. Unless regulation intervenes, AI platforms tend to win. Advertising, media, and recommendation systems are another category. Behavior-based optimization, massive data aggregation, and rapid iteration make these sectors ideal for AI dominance. In many cases, AI platforms have already won. Logistics, routing, scheduling, and forecasting also favor AI platforms. These are optimization problems where learning aggregates across firms and providers are largely interchangeable. Customer support and knowledge work execution is another area. Tasks are commoditized, and outcomes are defined mainly by speed and cost. AI platforms win on execution, though not necessarily on trust. There are also industries where AI platforms do not win. In industries with hard liability and risk ownership, AI dominance breaks down. Examples include surgery, aviation, nuclear operations, and court-level legal judgments. In these domains, someone must guarantee outcomes. AI vendors cannot absorb liability, and regulation slows engine dominance. Here, solution providers retain power. AI platforms also lose in industries where performance is ambiguous or negotiated. Examples include strategy consulting, executive coaching, therapy, and creative direction. There is no single correct output. Value is contextual, relational, and reputational. Learning does not aggregate cleanly. I can assist, but it does not become the engine. In industries where integration complexity dominates, AI platforms also struggle. Construction, infrastructure projects, and defense systems depend on coordination, politics, contracts, and long timelines. Tools help, but they do not define outcomes. Finally, in markets where switching costs remain low, AI platforms cannot lock in power. Commodity software, non-embedded tools, and short-term services lack the dependency required for platform dominance. The real insight from the book is this: AI platforms do not win industries. They win layers of industries, and they win only the layers that define performance, learn the fastest, and can be abstracted away from liability. Everything else remains controlled by humans or institutions. This leads to an important implication for you. Earlier, you asked whether relying heavily on ChatGPT would make you lose. The book's answer is that you lose only if your value is pure execution. You win if your value lies in judgment, framing, risk absorption, or accountability. That is why prompt selling alone is fragile. Tool usage does not equal vulnerability, and owning decision logic is the real source of defensibility. To sum up, AI platforms win when they become the engine. They lose when someone else must guarantee outcomes. However, there's this nuance. AI platforms win inside healthcare, but they do not automatically win healthcare as a whole. Those are different claims. What I meant before, and what still holds, is this. When I said AI platforms will win in healthcare, I meant something precise. AI platforms will win the performance-defining layers of healthcare, not the entire industry. Healthcare is not one thing. It is a stack of layers rather than a single monolith. At the bottom are the performance layers. These include diagnosis accuracy, imaging interpretation, risk prediction, triage prioritization, and clinical trial design. These layers are increasingly dominated by AI. Above that are the decision and accountability lay.
Imagine a future whereby using AI would be signaling credibility in healthcare, medtech, and pharma. People would associate AI with speed, insight, and better results. Therefore, their attention would shift to those who use it the best. So AI may be reshaping the question for who gets trusted, funded, or followed. In today's competitive world, understanding how AI is coordinated behind the scenes can be a real advantage. If you want to understand that logic, check out my podcast with my dear colleague Nuria. I also offer a simple step-by-step course on AI accuracy and evidence checking.